Sales is hard for only one reason. It's not hard like war. It's hard because you feel sorry for yourself because no one got back to you, and your whole life everyone's told you how great you are. But that's the rite of passage. It's the door you have to walk through. If you want all the riches that you want to have success. And that's why sales is hard, because it's intensely emotional. And I don't think enough leaders give into or have compassion for how intense emotionally sales really is. The job of a CEO, in my opinion, is number one, you're an obstacle remover to get your team, right? Remove obstacles. And then two, you as the CEO design and build the sales process. And then you hire a team to execute your sales process.
Cold outreach versus kind of existing relationships and referrals.
Ideally, referrals would be the best way to go, but you're going to probably die on the vine because you're not going to get enough referrals. We believe very strongly in both businesses, the cold outreach is the way to go. Why core principles are so important is because once you agree on a core principle that that's part of the company, that's what we stand for, then when you run into these biases or roadblocks or fears or whatever it is, you just point to the core principles. Wait, I thought we had a core principle we all agreed on was ask. Yep, we did. Okay, then why aren't we asking? Oh, good point. What are the more acute problems our target customer has, and how can we solve for those? Then supply the answers online so people can then search for that question and you become the answer.
Gui, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today.
Thanks, Lewis. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I even just reading through the introduction to your book about millennials, I was like, all right, it's one of those things where I'm like in this process of building an outline. So I kind of try to build a picture of like who you are, what you do, the depth and breadth of your presence. And then within like a few minutes, I'm like, all right, outline's complete. There's a lot to talk about here. I think just to kind of focus the conversation for the listener and maybe give them a scorecard to hold up against me, what I feel like I'm really interested in speaking with you about is the success you've had building a sales team, and then also the kind of evangelism you have for content marketing in terms of, right, the point of it, right, these things aren't disconnected, they're very interconnected. So I'm just excited to kind of dive into those things. So thanks for being here.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'll start with one question I got from who was the co-host of the show before the podcast kind of rebranded as from the Lewis and Kyle show to what's now the Orbit Marketing Podcast, because he works in investment sales. He's familiar with Dakota, and maybe in this answer, you can give a good like intro to Dakota and the types of services and products that you all offer. But his question was, how do you think about the balance between cold outreach versus kind of existing relationships and referrals?
Well, ideally, referrals would be the best way to go, right? But you're going to probably die on the vine because you're not going to get enough referrals. We believe very strongly in both businesses, the cold outreach is the way to go. If you can get a referral, there's absolutely no doubt that would be the best way to go. Having a systematic cold outreach approach with the right email, doing it persistently but politely, and not being weird, right, and doing it naturally is really the key. So there's probably people maybe that are going to be equal to me in terms of the belief in cold outreach, but probably no one would exceed me because we wouldn't be in business if we didn't do cold outreach. And then you also have this concept, which is one of our core principles, which is called ASK. ASK, it's not even an acronym. It's just, you have to be asking, right? You got to ask. And, a lot of people get scared to ask. It's almost like, Lewis, think about when you're driving and you come up to a long line of cars on an exit and you like cut in. Some people are like, oh my God, that person's going to hate me. I'm like, well, you're never going to know that person. You know what I mean? Like it's a perceived thing that we create in our brain about doing cold outreach. And then all of a sudden you do cold outreach and someone says, sure, Lewis, I'd love to take a meeting with you. You're like, oh my God, that's amazing. Right? Well, if you hadn't asked, you wouldn't have gotten that meeting. And then that could end up being a client for 10 years. So you have to be asking.
Yeah, I loved reading through the core values, and it's kind of in the media that I consume kind of in preparation for this, it came up frequently, which is kind of the good test of like a core values list in name only, where people say it to have it and put it on a wall somewhere versus like it's in the heartbeat of the organization. It's very embodied. And another one that I'd kind of like to hear expand on along the same notes is you're in the convincing business, right? Or your goal is to never be in the convincing business.
Yeah. Yep. You want to sell apples to Apple buyers. You want to be selling a product to somebody that wants to buy it. And in the investment sales business, it's very easy to try to convince people that they should be investing in a certain asset class, but they don't. and they're never going to. So you just want to take no for an answer and move on to the next person. That's really important.
Yeah, I think kind of like what you said about cold outreach kind of feeling weird. Like usually the reason it feels weird is because something like prerequisite is off like that, right? It's like, well, you feel weird reaching out to this person because they don't need it.
Yeah, it really comes down to how much you believe in your service or product. So if you have a really, really high belief that it can add an enormous amount of value to them, then you're not going to feel that weirdness. And think about, now I've got a few years on a lot of people, having done this a long time, and I'll be 58 in February. So if every business that people say are made up of, every business is a people business, and it's like, okay, take that, write that down, right? Every business is a people business. But then what you realize over time within organizations, because they're all people, each individual has certain biases, right? So can you imagine if you had somebody who had a bias against sending a cold email on your sales team? You're not going
I think they're in the wrong seat. Yeah.
to, right? I mean, but people have biases to certain things that they create in their own head. And listen, we all do. So why core principles are so important is because once you agree on a core principle that that's part of the company and that's what we stand for, then when you run into these biases or roadblocks or fears or whatever it is, or ways of doing things, you just point to the core principles. Wait, I thought we had a core principle we all agreed on was ask. Yep, we did. Okay, then why aren't we asking? Oh, good point. Like we launched a new product last week. We sent out the email to this one group of allocators, and we ended up getting 62 registrations. And we've never done a product. We've had a product for 6 years. We've never done a product launch webinar. So we threw our hat over the wall, which is a Dakotism, and just did it. And boom, right? And 40 people attended. So you just, yeah. And, but I will say this, you have to do it from a place of value. So people might say, listen, I'm sick of, I say to our team all the time, you're telling me you've never unsubscribed from an email of a product that you like or service that you like. But it's just, I get a lot of emails. I love your product, but I want to clean up my inbox. Doesn't mean I don't like the product. Doesn't mean I don't like the person. It's just that stuff happens. That doesn't mean we should stop asking, right? For an introduction, for a meeting, for them to attend an event, a webinar where you're going to add value to their professional career.
Was there like a clear moment, a clear aha moment where everything kind of clicked in terms of this digital content thing is like essential, can't ignore it, like it is the missing ingredient in sales marketing in your career? Because it's been kind of like a hill you've really planted a flag on. Do you like know the moment when that kind of came into clarity?
Yeah, it was August 24th, 2018. We had a failed platform, and in order to appease the salespeople that were subscribers to the platform, we invited them to our weekly investment sales call, and which is kind of counterintuitive to invite your competition to your weekly sales call. So we did that, and we choreographed it. We brought on someone, interviewed them, and we turned it into a show. And then we realized right then and there that people loved it, and that if you share value, and then also is that what we also learned is that you never know what people are going to like. But back to value, right? If you're trying to deliver value, like when I do podcasts, I do anything, people always ask me kind of in a roundabout way, hey, could we give a plug for Dakota? Could we give a plug here? Hey, do you want me to tee you up for a question? I'm like, no. If you want to, do whatever you want to do. If it's part of the conversation, that's great. I'm here to provide value to Lewis and your business, and I'm here to deliver value to our customers. And I don't need to give the plug. I don't need to have a commercial for me. I don't need any of that because I want to deliver value. And over time, if you deliver value to people, right, over time they'll pay and they'll watch your content. And so that part's important because then, despite you're asking, but you really have to believe. This is why discounting your services a lot is problematic. Is because that our competition discounts a lot. But they don't believe in their product. If you're willing to sell your product for a price where you can't make money, and right, then you don't believe, right? You don't have any confidence in your product. And Apple doesn't discount the iPhone. And you really have to believe in your product, and it can really change people's lives, add value. Like the product that potentially your good friend uses that was on this podcast is our database, which is a fully curated CRM of investment allocators that investment salespeople need to call on. And so we deliver complete, accurate, and up-to-date contact information. So your friend doesn't have to go searching on websites and different places to find people's email addresses and waste all that time, right? They can say, I'm going to Boston for a day of meetings. They can go into our metro area tab in Boston and see all the key people they want to meet with, really nicely organized.
Yeah, I think where a lot of people get lost, and myself included from time to time, is because if you don't like have something kind of mind, it feels like vacuous to say like, what does it mean to add value? What does it mean to provide value? And I think just one of the simplest, like if people like, okay, well, what can I do that's valuable? And to your point of like structuring this podcast, focusing on less like, let me just show and kind of, infomercial myself and everything that we do, and like not asking people to tee you up in all these ways. It's like, let's start from a place of like validated value. And what validated value usually looks like is questions, like questions and struggles. So if like everyone's asking the question and so like I know for sure all the things that I ask you about are things that, I'm personally struggling with or considering or trying to learn about. And so who else needs those things? Everyone else with the same questions, concerns, struggles, confusions. So if it's valuable to me because I have this question, it means there's things I don't know, and you're going to, have useful answers for that. So that is value in that specific way. And it's the same in terms of deciding like how to make content valuable, how to make a product valuable. And just like you said, I mean, it's not so hard to reverse engineer the pain points or the features from the Dakota database into, who exactly, what's the struggle? It's like, well, clearly the data used to be out of date and accurate and all these other things. And so that's a frustration. That frustration goes away. I mean, it's simple enough in theory.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, you're in the newsletter business. I couldn't be a bigger fan of newsletters and delivering value. I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. The more value, and we're working really hard on ours right now, our Dakota newsletter. And, with everything else we do, like there's so much room for improvement. It would be the greatest understatement on the planet. We just didn't focus on it. Now it's like all coming into focus. But if you're in the newsletter business, right, that's delivering, people are going to subscribe because each day or each week you send them something valuable, right, that helps them in their day-to-day job, whatever that might be.
Exactly.
Right.
One thing that stuck out to me, and it's just such like a simple stat, but it's just been like kind of playing on repeat. Because I'm always looking for different ways to, like, I don't have anything new to say, right? I've been selling the same thing for a year and a half. It's very, very simple. It's like newsletters consistently deliver value, but it's like, how are different ways to say that? What are different ways to say the same thing? And something that really stuck out to me that I'm like absolutely going to borrow and give credit for is just like your expertise of the millennial buyer, right? You write that book, and the stat in there is like, I'm going to screw up the exact, I got the number right, but maybe the context, something like 70% of millennials spend 70% of their time before, like doing research online before purchasing, like of the decision-making process, 70% happens before they'll hop on a call with you. And so like what that means is like, you want to have good information. Like you want to, like I just am like, I've been crafting like in my head, like what scripts I need to change based on this, like where to insert it in. But maybe you can kind of shed light on like what that statistic means and how you like think it should inform a sales and marketing process versus kind of the different archetypes.
We learned it from a guy named Marcus Sheridan, and called They Ask You Answer is his philosophy. Mm-hmm. And basically you have to think of all the questions, number one question someone would have about your product, then supply the answers online. So people can then search for that question and you become the answer. And then you just create a lot of content around what people are searching for and asking questions about your product. For the most part, millennials will go to YouTube before they'll go anywhere else, or TikTok. And Gen Zs, right, my kids, they all go to TikTok or YouTube to learn anything just immediately, right, instinctually. So if you know that, and then you don't have some kind of a demo video or anything on YouTube or TikTok, then you're missing that opportunity for people to go find you and learn about you in that place. So yeah, I think it, like you said, the word reverse engineer, I think you just have to think through what is the buying process for anybody buying your product? How do they go about it? And then just reverse engineer, right? And tell them exactly what they want to know. And look, I'd say this problem solution, I think you're underestimating the power of your service, because I think your service is very valuable and there's always something new to say. What we always try to think about is, what are the more acute problems our target customer has, and how can we solve for those, right? Because like one of the most acute problems, right, is health and wellness, right, or drugs to solve health issues. So just think about, Wegovy and Ozempic, right, solving a big problem. Now there might be side effects and all that other stuff. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not here to, but nonetheless, they charge a lot of money because they solve a big problem, right? You know what I mean? When you kind of start to think it in those terms. So the more acute the problem, right, the more money you can charge for it, and the more value you can deliver. And the more value you deliver, the more money you get. So, and there is a way to get there. I mean, I would say, I don't want to spend the whole podcast though talking about your particular service, but an email newsletter is extremely valuable to somebody if they're subscribing and someone's receiving that in their inbox, and you're giving them news that they don't have to go out and get on their own, and it's specialized to their domain or whatever that might be. That's very valuable. Now, Substack allows people to monetize it a little bit better. So I'm a big, to me, I mean, my goodness, I think that in getting people over the hump of, well, is anybody going to look at it? All that other stuff. I mean, that's where you have to just suspend belief for quite a long time and just keep doing it and just keep adding value and then incrementally improving it, week in, week out.
We can transition to some kind of sales questions as well. I think, you're not just this lone marketer, lone sales guy, kind of lone gun who's just, and that's, or maybe I'll use the word cowboy to pull in another value here, but not like a cowboy, just one man show. You've got a team. And I think that's a lot of where I'm at. I'm curious, in your company, do you hire fresh reps or do you hire experienced people? Like, what's kind of your target avatar for the salespeople that you hire?
For sending cold emails, because that's that role, to send cold emails, we almost exclusively hire former Division I lacrosse players that have no experience.
And you want to elaborate on that archetype, why they're perform so well for you?
Since seventh grade, they've been told they stink. I'm just using a nice term, by their coaches. Okay. And they've grinded through middle school, high school, club ball, and then they made it to Division I, and they made it all the way through and graduated. And they're amazing teammates. They take care of their teammates, but they want to kill their teammate to get on the field. But if their teammate asks them to do anything, they'll do it. They'll drop everything. And so they just have such DNA of resilience that people not getting back to them, or them thinking that people don't want to hear from them, it just doesn't enter their brain. So I never have to deal with any tears or any of those biases around sending an email, asking for a meeting. Hey, I'm going to be in Boston. Can you meet at 3:00? And a lot of people are just freaked out about that. That archetype, 0. So then you just match the archetype. So I don't need to do a Myers-Briggs test on anyone.
It's just, did you play D1 lacrosse?
Yeah, and most of it's from the network anyway. So the guys are all lax bros, and they're all just incredible people. But that's not a derogatory comment. It's a huge compliment, right?
I played lacrosse, so I'll take it as a compliment. Not at the college level, or at the high school level. But I played the sport in middle school a couple of years. It's a good time.
Yeah, it's a great sport, but it's like your coaches aren't like, if you're a golfer, which I was in high school and college, you're told how great you are every day. You're not. Your coach never tells you that in those team-oriented sports. No one's putting their arm around you and giving you a hug. I mean, geez, if you're a golfer, you're petted like you're royalty. You hit a 350-yard drive.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're the best. You're the best. You're the best. Then all of a sudden they send an email. No one gets back to them. They're like, well, I'm used to telling people, I'm used to hearing how great I am all the time. Right? Not lacrosse players, not hockey players, not soccer players. Right? It's brutal. But they love the game. They play for the love of the game. And the coaches do a lot of great stuff for them. So it's not like the coaches are being mean. It's the nature of the beast.
I'm gonna have to think about that in our hiring process. I like that. Like, the specific sports kind of produce a specific type. I mean, you see a lot of it, like insurance. Like, there's a lot of these industries kind of have their carved paths. So I'm keeping an eye out for that.
Cool.
I like that. In terms of an organization, what are some steps or some signs that they are at a level of maturity for the founder to start stepping out of sales? Because I think a lot of companies, I know I've done this myself, right? You have the like, oh, I want to scale, let me step out of sales and like focus on, bigger initiatives or whatever. And then there's pieces that were left undone. Do you have like a checklist or kind of it doesn't need to be like a ready checklist, just a few questions you'd ask a founder? Like, I think it's time for me to build a sales team and stop doing the hand-to-hand combat myself. What would you say to that person?
I would say that you never, ever, 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 ever do that. Ever, ever. So the job of a CEO, in my opinion, is number one, you're an obstacle remover to get your team, right? Remove obstacles. And then two, you as the CEO, design and build the sales process. And then you hire a team to execute your sales process. People who then sub it out to a VP of sales, they burn through VPs of sales. And listen, I just wrote my second book, The Dakota Way, and I talk about this. So I learned the hard way. I learned by the read my mind process. So I didn't start where I am today. I've evolved because of the.
What's the read my mind process?
It means you bring it, you hire somebody and you say, hey, watch what I do. Just imitate me. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work in sales. And sales is hard for only one reason. It's not hard like war. You're being shot at and killed. It's hard because you feel sorry for yourself because no one got back to you, and your whole life everyone's told you how great you are. You know what I mean? Or you want. No one wants that. No one wants rejection. And no one wakes up every morning and says, "Man, I want to send 30 emails and have one person get back to me." Maybe. I didn't go to college for that. Right? I didn't go to college to scientifically break down the subject line, the one sentence, body of the email, the clear call to action, right? But that's the rite of passage. It's the door you have to walk through. If you want all the riches that you want to have success. Then that's why sales is hard, because it's intensely emotional. And I don't think enough leaders give into or have compassion for how intense emotionally sales really is. And I think if you have a heart and you have a conscience, you're going to understand that, and you're going to bond with your sales team. And then they're going to be like, wow, this guy really gets it. He really appreciates just how hard this is. And it's not easy. And, coming to work every day and I send my 40 emails and I get one response, 0, 3, what have you. And then, geez, I get a meeting and the guy's jumping up and down like crazy and he's sincere and he's 58 years old. It's like, man, oh man. So I guess he's saying this really matters. So yeah, to answer your question, CEO never gets out of sales. I go on every single onboarding for our new customers, every one of them, to say thank you and welcome. So yeah, you never get out. I would jump on any sales call at any time. I go on every 7:45 sales check-in for our business. We have a check-in for 11 minutes every morning at 7:45 for the whole sales team. And
how do you run that meeting, or how does that meeting run?
It starts with a good news from the day before. So there's 2 key numbers that matter. First time demos set up the day before, re-engage demos. Now that we're more mature and older, we have people that we've engaged with that we've lost touch with and re-engage. We know those at 5:00 anyway, but we repeat that. We then go through the calendar for the day, all the meetings that are on the books. So everyone likes to listen to hear what's going on. And then every single inside sales guy, which there are 14 of them, BDRs, they go through the 5 cities they're scheduling for and the dates. And so they have to do 30 seconds. Okay, my plan for today is I'm scheduling for Boston on this date, New York on this date, Connecticut on this date. We never lose focus. You always have to have 5 cities. Why? Because picking a city and booking meetings, just like, for instance, let's just say this. Let's say that your best friend's getting married in Boston.
I've got that happening twice this year.
So. Okay. In Boston, just pick a Friday in February. So then you're like, shit, I'm going to be in Boston. I'm going to go in Thursday night, right? I'm going to book a day of meetings in Boston on Friday. So now you're like, fuck, I'm going to be there. I've got intent. Boom, you rip out 5 meetings. Well, somebody did that to me, like 2011. They said, yeah, I'm going to be in LA and this. I'm like, no, Portland. I said, well, why did you wait to have Charlie tell you that he was going to be there? And he asked if you could schedule him some meetings, which is one of our portfolio managers. So let's just be proactive. Let's pick 5 cities all the time. Boom, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4:30. We call it city scheduling. So they always have to have 5 cities on the calendar for that express purpose. I mean, one of my best friends called me and goes, yeah, he goes, I've got this event. I'm going to be, in Chicago, schedule a bunch of meetings. So, dude, I've built 2 businesses based upon that activity, that you're going to be there for an event that's not related to business, and then you book a bunch of business meetings around it. And the only reason you book those business meetings is because you didn't want to go there and sit in a Starbucks all day long, right? It's like, and we build a business around it.
I love it. And you also do, I saw on the website, and I like hosting events as well. Is that another part? Like you kind of create your own reason to go to the city? I didn't connect the dots on that until now.
Yeah, so you create your own reason, and then the team uses our Dakota Cocktails event. So if we're having an event in Chicago on a Thursday, the boys will then send emails and invite, hey, Lewis, we're going to be in Chicago for our Dakota Cocktails. Love to see you there. Can you, during the day, can I come by at 9 o'clock and say hello? So then they use the cocktail event as an excuse and a reason to schedule a meeting. So, and then if they show up to the cocktail event, which we get about 70 to 90 people at every event, you now have customers and prospects all interacting and networking with one another.
Yeah. And that's another form of value, right? Providing for people is like, you made a beneficial introduction, whether or not they end up buying anything from you that day. Like, oh, well, you're the guy who put me in touch with this guy. And now kind of we've tapped into those reciprocity and all those good.
Yep, exactly. So we ended up, and then if you invite somebody to a really cool venue for free drinks and food, it's great. And to network with industry colleagues, yeah, there couldn't be any nicer, and we do it, and it's a blast. There's just not enough venues for people to do that. And when you have such high turnover in our industry, making those meaningful connections on a consistent basis is really good.
Yeah, and it positions you in their mind, right, as just very credible. It's like, oh, they're putting this together. They're not a mom and pop shop. They're a established entity.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of bridging the physical. Do you have a piece? I know the original sales call that you decided to make public and turn a show might be your answer to this, but if another one comes to mind, that'd be great. In terms of what the most impactful piece of content that you've published has been. Impactful could be described as, just like you mentioned, the webinar you just launched last week had great great registration. So it's like showing a lot of positive signal for the new product. So it could just be like purely financial or quantitative in that sense, or it could be like it could just be a book as well. But something that really stands out is like, that was the piece of content that like doubled down my belief that like, yeah.
Yep. The content that works the best are the top 5 of blah, blah, blah list. Top 5 RAs in Boston, top 5 family offices, or top 10, top databases for investment firms, CRMs for investment firms, top institutional investor databases for investment firms. It's all that top stuff. That's what people like lists, people like top, because that's what they'll search for. Those are the most impactful of anything that we've done. Ironically, the thing that's gotten, even though it doesn't provide any value, I just did it for, fun. We wrote how to integrate Salesforce and Outlook, how to integrate Salesforce and Gmail. That's the number 1. So
just that tutorial.
Yeah.
When you say number 1, in terms of just like number 1 organic hits on Google or
content that we have, because it's just searched for so much. People want to integrate Salesforce with their email.
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
I have one. Yeah. It's not, it's another kind of business axiom, right? It's not what you want, it's what other people want, or it's not what you think they want, it's what they want. It's just if the search volume's there and no one's got a good answer to it and you're number 1, then we had a customer who, they're like an app, a fitness app, workouts, and they get so much traffic for just like Google Sheets template for X workout, like Google, or workout plan for weight loss, workout plan for 6-week workout plan, a 5-week workout plan, 7-week workout plan, just because those are what people search every day. And they just put in spreadsheets, and it's a great little online funnel they have. Boring stuff. But,
yeah. No, or very super high value to the customer, right?
Exactly. We talked about lacrosse a little bit. I'm curious. So, don't mean to make things, too personal here on my side. I'm at a nexus kind of considering moving back to New York City from Arizona. I live in Arizona now, from Vegas. I love the city. Spent some time there last year, moved back. Anyway, I was just there for a week. It was great. And Arizona is a big golf scene. If there's one pro for Arizona, it's golf. How valuable of a skill in terms of sales, marketing, do you feel about golf? Overrated, underrated, depends on the industry.
No, it's an amazing way to build relationships with people, right? I mean, if you have 4 hours and you're actually interested in them, the only thing I would make sure if I gave any advice to anyone is that in the first two holes, whomever you're playing with, ask about them. The only downside to golf is that you go play golf with, a potential customer or someone, you take them to play golf and you never take the time to get to know them because you're so wrapped up in your own game. Make sure you get and do it in the first couple holes immediately. Just ask the questions and then be sincere about it. I'm not saying that as a ploy. I'm just saying it's really painful to play golf with someone and they literally never ask you a question about yourself. Right? It's like, so yeah, I think golf can be very effective and I would never talk business on the golf course. Maybe having a beer afterwards, I would, but not on the course. Especially if you're the one where you're trying to entertain them. Don't just get to know them, have fun, build a relationship, and yeah, I see a lot of people have a lot of success with that.
I like that. This is kind of tacky. I was at an event last weekend, and event you sign up, there's a little swag bag with a sweatshirt, and in the sweatshirt on the little wrist area had 10 icebreaker questions, in really fine print. I was like, it's kind of tacky, but then I just catching myself, in the bathroom looking at the sweatshirt when I'm washing my hands. And then I go back to the room. I could just ask the conversation. We weren't really talking about anything meaningful. I could just totally change the pace. Not cheesy icebreaker questions, but decent get to know someone questions.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get it tattooed, especially because it was a Jewish event. So no one's getting really any tattoos, but
that's funny. Yeah. It sounds.
Take that to put it on the scorecard at the golf course or something. Some little icebreaker questions.
That's hilarious.
The core values that you have, I'm curious when the last time you kind of updated them. You seem like they're a thing that's again, not biblical, but they're carved into stone. You know them off the top of your head. They're very real, very embodied. What stage these current 10 values that are on the site, one was you lock those in. Was this you've built a lot of companies and now you've kind of, what it takes and here's where we're at. This is what matters, or they're kind of continuously evolve, but they seem like they've just been tried and true for some time at this point.
Yeah, we don't take any off because they're in our own words. It's what we stand for. And there's our guiding principles. So everything that we do. And then we definitely here and there add to them. Just if something kind of makes sense. One that I haven't done yet, but that I want to add in as a company gets bigger, is this whole idea of moving fast. Mm-hmm. Is a really big deal as you grow a business. And it would be this Jeff Bezos anti-bureaucracy, right? His whole ambition was to create core principles that blew up bureaucracy and decision-making. So make decisions quickly, move fast. And then also how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So as you grow a business, more and more priorities come up. And so in order to move fast, you have to have some type of structure to coach your team on how to make decisions more quickly. And, one step at a time is the answer. And a lot of this stuff is just break it down, ask why, what's your end result that you're looking for? Just like in your newsletter, what's the result that you're looking for from sending out the newsletter? For your customers, it could be brand building, it could be calls to action, where they book a meeting. It could be education, or whatever it might be. And so, yeah, so they definitely get added to, but all the early ones were all the core principles that we walked 8 feet, don't go cowboy. We saw apples to apple buyers. Those are really core really core to who we are. And every day we reference those every day. And it really just comes down to teamwork, right? Being a good teammate. That's don't go cowboy. Tap into the collective knowledge of the group. The biggest waste for any organization is that even if you have 3 people, and if the 3 people aren't communicating kind of what's going on, if I'm your partner and I have a ton of meetings one week and I learn all this stuff, and next thing you know, I don't share that with you. But if you had known that I met with this person or had this conversation, they'd give feedback, but there's no mechanism to connect that, then you're just wasting. I think about if you turn it into 20 people, 40 people, everyone's having all this, knowledge that they're gaining through their day-to-day work. But if it's never getting into the group, you're missing out on the collective knowledge of the group, which is so robust at every organization. So
I'll probably make this the last question here. I was listening to a podcast last night. It was with Russell Brunson and Dan Kennedy, who I know you're familiar with because I think he's in the area. And they were talking about, Russell was kind of saying like, Russell's someone I look up to as someone who's, a very good marketer, founder of ClickFunnels. And he's kind of just told this like very honest story of like a marketing principle that he just like forgot for a couple of years. Like he's like, I wrote a book about this 7 years ago. Then I was struggling for this period like 2 years ago. And I realized it's because I forgot all those things I put in my book, like this thing specifically. Do you feel like you have anything like that recently in terms of like a marketing lesson you just relearned or sales lesson you just relearned? That's like, you've known it for a long time, but for whatever reason, it fell out of alignment. And now you're just like, can't believe I let that one slip. And now I'm just doubling down on it yet again.
Yeah. And that comes down to thinking and asking why all the time, taking the time to think in the morning, asking why you're doing something. Absolutely. And those core principles, and he's a very common sense thinker.
Dan?
Russell Brunson, very
Russell, yeah. Sense. His books are all like cartoon, right? That's like the point.
Yeah, and it's just like we're going through, right? It's very common sense, but a lot of noise gets in the way. And so, yeah, I'm struggling right now, but there was one just recently. It absolutely comes up, right? Where things that to be true and that you should have followed, it can kind of get off. So we're in the data business. And sometimes if you don't have a really concrete process in place that's followed every single day, one data thing, it's just like a boat, right? If it's 1 degree off for a day, it's one thing. But if it's 1 degree off for 6 months, you could be a different part of the world. And so that's why processes are so critical. That's why CEOs have to own the sales process, I believe, because that is the revenue generating activity. I don't know what's more important than the revenue generating activity. Maybe tech and product, but without without people booking meetings, it's hard to make products. So, but yeah, I think it's always revisiting all the time is a very important activity.
Amazing. Well, I know we're recording this end of January. You have a book come out probably by the time this is published. I'll probably time it so it's pretty close in alignment. I had the name right here. The Dakota Way, time-tested principles that will turn you into a world-class fundraiser. I'm looking forward to checking that one out, spending more time with the previous one. There's just lots of good, once you're on a mission, and like all these books just provide, it doesn't matter that I don't necessarily sell to investment professionals, just these same principles, they're still useful for, people are the same, right? There's a lot of overlapping archetypes. So I'm excited to dive more in, and thank you very much for spending the time here today.
Cool, Louis. All right, well, thanks. Great to be on. It's great to meet you. Good luck with the newsletter business.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.